These literacy lessons were the starting point, and what made them especially powerful and politically consequential in Brazil at that time is that the Brazilian Constitution of 1932 did not allow illiterates to vote. So we had 20 million illiterates in Brazil at that time, around 1960, and they were mostly poor, working class, and so on, and they were not allowed to vote. So the electorate in Brazil was skewed towards more affluent Brazilians, and the poor and the working class were written out of the franchise, the ability to vote. Now, at the end of 40 hours of instruction, Paulo Freire's students in these inexpensive literacy classes had control of basic reading and writing and could then qualify to vote. So the president of Brazil at that time, João Goulart, he was a liberal president, attended the graduation class in a very famous setting in the town of Angicos in the northeast of Brazil, where the first literacy class graduated from. The first showcase of this literacy class was offered. The president brought his entire cabinet, and he watched the students who had been a few months earlier illiterate suddenly able to read and write and address the president that they are no longer part of the masses, but now we are people and we have the right to vote and determine our future. So the liberal president Goulart, was very impressed by this and invited Freire to direct the national literacy campaign. And he did that for the next year, 63 to 64. And what happened was that he was on the verge of opening 20,000 literacy circles and hoping to graduate 5 million new voters for the national election campaign of 1965. The elite that had been governing Brazil by legally excluding all the poor and working class from voting were very alarmed at this, and so they launched a coup on March 31st, 1964, that overthrew the government of Goulart, forced him out of the country, and arrested Paulo Freire. What I'd like folks to understand is this, that we often talk about empowering education, and that Paulo insists that education is politics. All education, all pedagogies are political. And we constantly discuss, well, what are the political impacts of our teaching? What's important to know is at that moment in Brazil, every time a student graduated from a Freirean literacy class, they immediately qualified to become a voter. And an enormous block of excluded poor and working class students were suddenly going to become able to vote and vote for the political parties that represented their interests. And it would pull Brazilian society in a very strong democratic direction because of the newly enfranchised voters. That led to the coup, and it was not until the opening, the Apertura in 1980 and so on, when a new constitution went into effect in 1988 in Brazil, when illiterates were allowed to vote. Now here's the difference. The Constitution of 1988 says illiterates may vote. Everybody else must vote. That all the illiterates can choose to vote or not, and literacy is not a requirement for voting. But neither are the literacy required to vote. The illiterate required to vote. But all the others who are already literate are obliged to vote. So there was still a distinction made, and that's as far as the democratic opening could go in the 1980s. So I've been talking for a long time, and I wanted to give a little foundation to what Paulo Freire had in mind when he invented this method and brought this philosophy to school and society. And I hope that folks read more and that we can have a good exchange about these issues. Thank you.